This is going to be a short introduction to Adobe Premiere and how to use it for editing video clips that you have produced either in camera or as short After Effects compositions. You know, the class is After Effects centric that I teach, but we want to get used to using the entire Adobe suite. So for instance, if whatever program you're in, if you're going to export a movie, it's best to get used to the media encoder. If you want to do sound, you want to really get used to Adobe Audition. And if you're going to edit video, you really don't want to do that in After Effects. If you want to put together shots and maybe tweak sound and things like that in real time, you'd use Adobe Premiere. So that's what we're going to do today. First off, we gather our assets. And for me, I just got some, and I've got my assets, this is very important, in a folder. And that folder is labeled, and everything stays within that folder. So remember, the whole idea and the mantra behind motion graphics is we create a single folder for the project, another folder inside that called assets, and then we put all of our assets in that folder so that when we have all of our files located in one folder, we can move it easily from place to place without getting broken links. The software just references those and links to those files, does not embed them, that you're going to use as assets. So if you up here, you see I have my hard drive called Data. I've got a Fall 2020 folder on that external hard drive, and then I've got a Tutorials folder. Inside the Tutorials folder, I've got Motion Graphics Lecture 11, Adobe Premiere. And inside there, I've separated it. Here's that voiceover we did earlier. So if I open that up, here it is, the Raven.
Record button. Make sure you look at your...
down here somewheres.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore.
And you'll remember that from Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, most of us. Close that out. And that's in a folder called Premiere Demo Voiceover. You know, it's basically a filing cabinet, right? Folders and files. And so you want to put files in folders and get it organized however you want. Here's my videos, and I just downloaded these from a site called VidEasy. Downloads pretty high-res clips pretty painlessly. So I've got some pictures of some crows or birds, ravens I get. Hence my voiceover. They're at least 2K, if not 4K, most of these clips. Here's some other ones. And mostly I just typed in a search for nature, you know, downloaded just simple little bites is all I was looking for. I'll use these to edit with. So I've got a series of things like that. Then we go back to Adobe Premiere. So if we go to Adobe Premiere and you fire it up, first thing you get is a welcome screen like this, like with most Adobe products. And right now we're going to create new project. And before we do anything else, we want to make sure we know where it is. If we come down here and just hit OK, by default it's going to bury it up there somewheres. Maybe the last place you put it, somewhere on your hard drive in a Documents folder, buried. So hard to track down. So you want to know where it is, and you want to know what you're going to call it, not untitled. So first off, let's browse to the folder. So I go over here and browse to it and tell her where I want it to live. It's on my Data folder and my Fall 2020 in my Tutorials folder, Motion Graphics 11, and there she be. And this is a Premiere project I'm going to save, and so I've created a folder for it that's now empty. And I'm going to put all my Premiere projects inside there. Probably just be one. But I know where it is. And then again, when I save that file in there and I write a file that's maybe inside this folder, the code's going to say, look outside this folder and look for a folder called this and go in there and find the file. And if you move those links, then links get broken. You can relink them, but it's a hassle and not best practice. So we want to get into good habits right off the get-go, organizing our files, keeping them all in the same folder at all times. So I'm going to open up that folder and I'll save away. I'll select that folder, and then also untitled's no good. So over here it's in fact my lecture number 11. So I'll call this Motion Lecture 11 and then a dot, and I'm getting into good habits with naming conventions, no spaces, no weird characters, so that it'll be cross-platform, even though it's not important, just a good habit to get into, good professional habit to get into good naming conventions. Motion Lecture 11, and what are we working on? Premiere demo. Separating words very cleverly with uppercase. Everything else will be a default there. I've told it where I want it to live, and I've told it what I want to call it. And so we'll click OK. And then we get to a screen that should look, in a few seconds, that should look fairly familiar. Up, system issues found. Okay. Yeah, it's telling me I've got some problems. Continue with known issues. Okay. In this version of Live by Technology, Die by Technology, in this version of Premiere Pro 2020, it's having a conflict with my graphics card, and it's told me that, but I'm going to go out on a limb, and knowing that it could crash, I'm going to go ahead and try to build this project. So if you look at the windows, they look very similar to After Effects. Let me maximize that window. In that we've got panels, and they're all gray, and everything's hard to see. But the basic layout over here, and if I go to Window and then Workspaces, and I am right now in All Panels, and while I'm there, I'm going to reset to Saved Layout. So that way all of us are on the same page in terms of our layout. Now, up in here, we have some other workspaces we can go to as well. So, for instance, in editing, and that's in fact what I'm going to do is edit. I'm going to go ahead and click on that one. So I'm in an editing workspace now. And if you do that, we'll be on the same page. Over here is usually where our project window is. In this workspace, it's down here. And I can tear off those tabs and put it up there if I want to. I'll leave it where it is for right now in this default. But usually I like it in the upper left corner. We import the media, we can probably right-click in that panel and come down to Import. Or we can go up to the File menu and go down here and go to Import. Or we can just go to the Finder and just sort of yank it in there from the Finder if we want to. And sometimes I like to do it that way. So if I minimize my window, and I come over to, let me see here, where are you? Here you are. And get these windows situated so I can see things. I could go ahead and pull that over. I've got videos that I've downloaded, and I've also got some music over here. We'll come to the music a little later, but I'll go ahead and import it. And most of these are just, stuff that I got off the audio library. And when I was sampling these things in the audio library, the thing I was most interested in was the music. I wanted to get the mood. Something sinister and dark, but also I was interested in the ending. I'm big on big finishes, so I would scoot down to the end in audio library and play the endings and just see how I like that. So if I pick it up from here, we want to visualize something fading out or supporting the music and vice versa. So for instance, that's a little long. Not too bad, that last thump, so that might be usable. But that's my workflow is what I was doing, and I've got a bunch of clips in there as well. So I'll just go back out to my main window with all my assets visible, and I'll just, instead of going in there and individually importing them, I'm just going to yank these things in their folders over here into that project window and let go. And same thing with the next one, demo videos. And then my voiceover. And then if I go back to the programs, file format not supported, it didn't like one of my files. Wasn't the voiceover, that looks good. So let's see what it didn't like. Like those. I'm just scooting back up here this way. Looks like it liked those too, so it didn't like one of my music files. That's fine, I've got plenty. So we start up here with the basic workspace. And again, you can grab these handles and kind of arrange them however you like, just resize them. But much like After Effects, most of their workspaces have the timeline at the bottom, and they have the main canvas window or monitor window in the front. Traditional editing in the old days would consist of reel-to-reel tape, and you would fast forward and rewind to the exact spot that you wanted to make the edit, and you would hit play, and on the other deck, that would record that, meaning a generational loss there. Very time-consumingly, it would cut on and cut off at specific times. So you time them in with time code. These days, those days are gone, but the tradition still stays the same. We usually have a source monitor on the left and our main monitor on the right. That's why when I work in 3D and After Effects, I like that active window on the right, and the left window can be my Cartesian space and move around whatever I want to see in 3D, but that right-hand side I like to be able to see what the camera's recording. So that tradition holds today. And basically you just take clips and you first preview them. There's a couple of ways to get clips into the main timeline from the project window. And you know what? I hate my project window there, so I'm going to grab that tab and I'm going to yank it off and put it up in here. Yeah. And then I'm going to open up that, let me see here, demo mix. I want the videos. I'm just going to make some edits with straight video clips for right now. I'll tag it with sound later. I'll double click on that, and it's inside of a folder, so I'll double click it again. And there they are, and I'll move my tabs up so I can see them a little bit better. So I think something like this one, and if I want to see what it looks like, I can double click it. There it is, and it opens up in a source window on the left, where it belongs, for my preferences anyway. And I can preview it in here. I can grab the playback head and do that. I can hit the play button. Mostly like, you know, regular tape decks from the Dark Ages, really. So that's what that clip looks like. And so if I want to create a new sequence, what I can do is, and it says no sequence right now. And in my main project window, if I go back to my main project window, you see I just have those folders created. But I can create a new sequence. I go up to Sequence, New, under the File menu, and then come down to Sequence. And if I do that, it's going to ask me what kind of sequence I want to create and what resolution I'm targeting. And we already know to go to, I usually use a DSLR, 1920 by 1080 is what we're looking for. And if I click on that DSLR setting with 1080 progressive, 30 frames a second, that's what we usually look at. That's our target media for this semester. It'll change to 4K within a year or two, maybe 8K, who knows. But there we go, 1920 by 1080 is what we're looking for. And so we go ahead and click OK. And then we got a window just like After Effects. And what we do is just yank clips down into the timeline. First, if we want to trim them first, and we can trim them in the timeline as well. And it's a lot easier to trim clips in the timeline in Premiere than it would be in After Effects. So we can trim them first. I'll go get a clip. It's going to be my demo videos here. And I'll start off with that one. So if I double click on it, it brings up the source menu. I go over and figure out where I want it to begin and end. This is the same clips. This is not going to be very earth-shattering. But let's say I want it to start there. I hit this little guy over here that says make it mark the end point. And if you look in that tiny little parentheses, it says the letter I. The one right next to it, the right bracket, says mark out point, and if you look in that tiny little brackets, it says a parentheses, it says O, which is the shortcuts, in and out. That is easy to remember. I for in, O for out, not command or control or anything, just I. So if I put my playback head where I want the clip to start and just hit I, there's my end point. That's where it's going to start. And if I preview the clip and say I want it to end there, for instance, and hit O, then there's my in and out point. So now if I grab the clip here and pull it down, it's going to grab the clip and the audio that comes with it. Down below here, I can separate that. I can grab just audio. Now you can see that's not available to me because there is no audio in that clip. If there were, I'd have an option of just dragging the audio. I also have the option of just dragging the video. Or I can drag both by just grabbing the picture. And that's what I'll do, even though there's no audio on it. And I'll pull it down in here. And when I do that, you can see it's snapping to these little lines. And what it's going to tell me is my clip does not match the sequence's settings. Change sequence to match the clip settings. This might be 4K, and I'm working in 2K. So that means if it is 4K and I'm working in 2K, then that will appear to be twice as big, right? Let's see. I'm going to keep these existing settings in the sequence I defined as 2K, and let's see what happens. And more than likely it's, you know, I'm going to pull my menu down here so we can kind of see what's going on. And then over here, instead of fit, I'll pull that down to like 25% and then grab it and see if I can move that around. Oh, I can't grab it that way. In order to manipulate the clip, like the opacity of it, fading in and things like that, we go to Effects Controls, either getting them in the left panel in this particular image, and nothing's available because I don't have anything selected. If I select the clip, I've got my parameters there I can keyframe. And so if I take scale and come down to 50%, nope, that's a 1920 frame. So that wasn't it. So I'm going to Command Z, put it back to where it was. So I'm not sure why I got that error, but a lot of times you'll pull a clip into, especially a brand new sequence you've just created, and it'll say, whoops, your sequence settings don't match. Do you want to change it or do you want to keep it? And it's your option. So that's what just happened with me. So anyways, there's my opening, and it looks awfully tiny because we're zoomed out, way zoomed out. And I'm going to come over here and grab this playback head, this navigation bar rather, and pull it to the left. First thing you want to learn in a motion graphics application is how to navigate in that space, how to zoom in and out of the timeline. Very important. So here I am at a little over 10 seconds. It looks like almost 12 seconds is what I've got. And that's what's going to happen. Now, at its heart, that's as easy as it gets. You yank clips, you sometimes trim the clips first, and then you come back in and tweak them in the main timeline. Or you just throw them in the main timeline, tweak them there, trim them there as well. But if you think about it, when you're editing clips, when you're making a movie, you want to take different clips. You want to either butt cut them together, and that's what it's called, or it just clips to the next image. Sometimes you want that. Or you'll want to overlap them and put a transition between them, the most ubiquitous being the cross dissolve. So one of them fades away as the other fades up, so they appear to fade into each other. And these programs just make it automatic, make it real easy. When I did a lot of editing for commercials, what I would do is pull what I would call beauty shots, and I've already done that. I've already kind of gone through some footage and picked out shots that I thought were really quite nice. I haven't put my dialogue in there, and if I really cared, I'd probably do that too. But sometimes when I tag it with sound after the piece is completely finished, it just sort of lines up and it's perfect. So what I'm going to do is, and you'll notice down in here, it created a video track. And right below it, it says A1, A2, A3. It starts out with 3 audio tracks and 3 video tracks. You can make several. You can make as many as you want until you run out of memory, I suppose. You rarely need more than 3 or maybe 4. At most, title sequences on top and things like that. But you literally just yank them down from the top. Let's go to another clip, let's say we decided that's too long a clip, 15 seconds for my intro, so it's going to come in and do that, and I'll fade it up later. I'll put those transitions in later, and right about there it should go away. I'm getting bored with the clouds, right? So I want to trim it. 2 ways to do that. One is to grab it on the end, put your cursor up there so it just turns into a little handle, and then pull it back, and then let go, and now you've just trimmed it. Command Z. Another way is they have a tool for that. And that tool is over here. And it's a razor blade, and it looks like one. And if you look at the little type right between the parentheses that are really tiny, it says C. So that's the shortcut. Think cut. So we have I for in, O for out, and C for cut. And if we go back up here to the main pointer, the selection tool, that's V for the selection tool. So V looks like an arrow, right? So V and C. And the reason I mention that is when you're editing, a lot of times you just go back and forth between those 2 tools, and it's so much easier to hit a C and get the see my cursor just turn into a razor blade. And also what will happen is it'll snap to wherever that playback head is. So I tweak it, get it exactly where I want it to make the edit, and I put my little razor blade after hitting C or choosing the tool, and I trim the clip. Then I want to get the other selection tool, and so I either go get it here or I just hit V. And again, when you're editing, you're going back and forth between those 2 tools, so it's so much easier to hit C, V, C, V when you're trimming things and tidying things up and adjusting tempo. So now I just grab that right-hand side and just hit the delete button, and it's gone. So far my film looks like this so far. And much faster and in real time. It takes Premiere nothing to play back an already rendered video clip. It's not really having to compute anything. So let's go back to my project. A good time to hit save. File, save. Never a bad time to hit save. The nice thing about Premiere is every 10 minutes, I believe, maybe 15 minutes, it creates a folder called autosave, and it saves a version of itself into that folder. I believe After Effects does that as well. Isn't that great? Because that means that the most you can lose is 10 minutes. on your file. If you crash or something happens or a power surge hits, you can go back to that folder and find a version that you did 10 minutes earlier or 15 minutes earlier. So that's a godsend. And then every, I think, 10 times it rewrites the first one, the last one over again. So it keeps replenishing it and deleting the 10th one, I believe. Keeps a running tab. Great idea. So what do we want to do from that? Well, we're in the sky, so let's have it go to this bird over here I'm seeing. So I'm going to double click on it and kind of get a rough idea of where I want it to go. And that's looking pretty good. So I'll pretend it's going to start right there. I for in. Now I could go over here and hit the little bracket. And then scrub down. Should play in real time. Nice. And I'm going to try to edit right on the motion. So when it's going like that, that's when I want to make the cut. So O for out. This doesn't have audio either, so there's no option there. So only option I have is drag the video. When I want both, I usually just grab it from the picture here. But again, the audio is not coming down here because there is no audio. So now if I play, we're going to have what's called a butt cut there. Let me zoom in a little bit more on this timeline. And so now my film looks like this so far. And so we've got, oops, look how big that file is, right? Because look at my source file and look how it's appearing over there. So that's a 4K file. Which means I've got so many options. I can really zero in on that thing. So if I take that file and go over to we control the size and we keyframe in the effects controls window. So over in here, and they look familiar. Stopwatches, over here is where the keyframes show up. So it makes it real easy, just a transition straight from After Effects to do things like scale. So if I bring that down to 50%, I'll bet it'll fit perfectly. Perfectly, yeah, right, because it's a 4K file and I'm working 2K. That's what I thought about the clip before it. So I'm now in the ballpark, but I also have options. What if I want to enlarge them? I can, because I've got resolution to spare. I can go double that size. So let's bring it up a little bit in scale. Instead of 50%, I'll bring him up to about that, 90%. And when I did that, he's off center. So under position, let's move him to down and to the right. And now it's going to do this, and just make sure he stays in frame. Yeah. And maybe we'll set a keyframe for position so he stays centered. So if I grab it here and under position, set a keyframe, and there she be. And then I go over here, and it's going to be an X parameter, right? So I've already set one keyframe. It knows what I'm doing, just like After Effects. So if I go over here and pull this, that's the Y, undo that. If I take the X and pull him over, well, that got too much real estate there on the picture, but right there, then that should make him centered and keep him centered because I'm moving the clip. And that's one advantage to having resolution. You can always do that, and I'm not going to distress it at all. So far we got a butt cut, and I'll just throw them up there just like that for starters. We'll grab a few more. We've got a raven in here. I think I'm going to use these ravens as cutaways. So what I'll do is I'll take a clip, and every once in a while I'll throw it on top so that it transitions that way. Great, another 4K clip. So look at the options I have there on that clip. Let's select that crow, and look at the resolution I've got there. So I can start out as a long shot. I can make it 50% and then zoom in tight without having to get any closer with the camera. And it's on top of it, so there's an eyeball over here. See, very intuitive, just like Photoshop, just like After Effects. Especially the timeline, it's identical. The difference is it's in real time, with music and everything in separate tracks and things like that too. So I'll use these little sequences as cutaways. I'm just going to select that, hit delete so it's gone away, and I'll grab a few other things back in here, maybe this waterfall. Now this does have sound, so let's listen to what this sounds like. At least it's supposed to. I see waveforms flatlining. So it exported the file with a soundtrack, but the soundtrack was silent. I can tell here, but just by looking at these. Now if I select that soundtrack and try to delete it, watch what happens. See how it selected both of them? So if I hit the delete button, it's going to get rid of both of those. Undo that. Usually we don't want that. We want to just get rid of that sound. Now I could preview it and just bring down the picture instead of that. But how do we get rid of that link when it's linked? Now, what happens is when you bring down a clip that has sound with it, it separates it, as you can see, into sound and image. But what it also does is it links them, which is trying to help you. So if you move one of them, the other one goes with it. Otherwise, your voice everything would get out of sync. So that's a good thing. Every once in a while, I want to unsync it, unlink it and unsync it, so we can delete one of them. In this, sometimes the image, but sometimes just the sound. In this case, the sound. That's this little guy over here, I believe. It says linked selection, and it's blue. And lots of little bells and whistles. 10-time rule really holds true in Premiere, but really we want to just throw clips in a timeline, trim them, adjust the sound, and then export the image. And then later maybe put some transitions between them. If I'm going to put some titles in there, I'll probably use After Effects. I might bring that whole movie in After Effects and just use it as a background layer. Well, I've already resolved my sound, and I've already resolved my beauty shots. So anyways, let's click that little blue button and unlink them. And now if I deselect and come back and just select that soundtrack, I can hit the delete button and it's gone. I'm going to undo that and put it right back again. Now every once in a while you'll take a different soundtrack and you want it linked. Sound effects, for instance. And when you move after you've linked it for a door slam or a footsteps walking, then you'll want to make sure that that's linked. So if you move the clip, it stays with where you sunk it. So the way to do that is we select them both, and then we go back to that little link section. It just toggles it on and off. So now if I deselect and come back, they're back linked again. And if I move one, I move the other. So in this case, we want to unlink them, and then we want to deselect, select, and then we want to grab the sound file and then hit the delete button so we just have the picture. And just get it out of our way, even though it's silent. And might as well not clutter up the audio tracks down here. So now it looks like that. And guess what? I didn't trim anything first, so I just put the whole clip in there. So it's going to do that. And when it comes in, maybe I want it starting a little bit sooner so it starts the pan. So I'll either hit C and change that to a razor blade, trim the clip, and then delete it. Or I'll go back to I'll hit V now and go back to my selection tool. Or I'll grab the clip and grab the end of it and pull it over. And when I do that and yank it over here, you can see how it's snapping to that point. It has the clip above it. So now it's going to start there on the pan. And right as it sort of resolves itself, yeah, I'll pull that down. And then I'll get this other clip of birds. This is kind of nice. I hope that's 4K. Let's see. I don't think it is because I'm seeing that house in there. Now I might do something a little bit that I shouldn't do anyway because I love this shot, but I don't really want the house. I just want the birds. So I'm going to try this, and I should. And then first off, again, same thing. There's no sound. I can see it's got a flat line on the thing there, so I'll select it, delete it. And then up in here, what I'm going to do is something we shouldn't do. I'm going to select the clip, and under scale, I'm going to bring that up just so I can get rid of that. And then bring it down on the y-axis so I can get rid of that house. And there's the picture, so I want to bring it up and just enough where I can get it on that house. There we go. Get rid of it. So now we've got this. Maybe it should start right about there. Yeah, right when that bird starts to fly, right? This one. So I'll just grab the end of it, pull it over, pull it down. Doing slow motion shots after the fact, so it's such an easy thing to do in Premiere as well. Okay, and where are we now in time? We're at 19 seconds, 10 frames, so not too bad. So I'll trim it there, and here I'm just going to hit C, get my razor blade, and then V, get my selection tool, select the clip, hit delete. So things start to go really quickly when you separate the editing process too. I'm not worried about sound just yet. Pulling beauty shots, putting them together, trying to think of a narrative that maybe works. I love those bees, but they don't really work with Raven, do they? Might have to use them anyway, though. Let's see here. What else have I got? I've got a bee down in here. Anyway, I think you've got the kind of rough idea of what's going on here. I'm going to pause this and throw a few more clips in there just the same way, and I'll come back and then we'll throw some transitions in there. So I've got a couple of, I've got some clips, beauty shots I call them, strung together in the timeline. So far it's about 38 seconds, and so I'll scrub it pretty quickly. It's that clip, and then it goes to this clip. And as you can see down at the bottom, they're all kind of just butt cut together. I'll bring this up a little bit. And over here I'll select this panel, and then come down in here and make it fit, so we can kind of see it a little bit bigger. And again, a lot of these are just exactly like After Effects. And as I scrub the timeline down in here, I took that clip because it was 4K, reduced it to 50% so we could see the whole clip, and then made it 100% and zoomed in. Got a lot of options with 4K when you're editing in 2K. And then if I go to the next scene, it's going to go to this. I'm not sure I'll use all of these things. And then I made that a little tighter, and then I've got another clip where it goes from that 100% 4K to 50% so I can zoom out. And I try to do that right on the edit too, so when he's moving his head, that's when it cuts. That's what you want to try to do. And then back to the roof shot, I put that back in after I did a close-up of the bird, and then bird's moving. And then I got rid of a lot of those other shots that really weren't quite working. And I've got some other shots down in here outside of my main timeline. This is about 36, 38 seconds, something like that. And I kind of just collect them over here rather than putting them in the project window and going back and forth. If I'm thinking about using it, I just stick it out there to the right. I'm going to eventually just select those and hit delete, so I don't need them, but to keep them handy. And remember, we navigate the timeline by this little guy down in here. So we want to make sure we understand how to zoom in and out of our timeline and always be conscious of where we are. Well, at this point in the edit sequence, it's a good time to bring my voiceover in. So let's go get it. It's in the project window, and I left it up in here, project window. And if it gets collapsed because you don't have enough space up in here and you've got effects controls and all these other things in your tab, it gets tabbed right here. So, you know, it takes a little while to get used to this interface. And there it says project, and that's what I want. And there's my voiceover. So if I double click it, there it is, the Raven AIF I created earlier. And I just drag it down here to the timeline just like I would an After Effects track and let go. It doesn't matter necessarily where I put it. I'll mix some music in here a little bit. And I believe let's zoom in on my timeline and slam myself back to zeroed out. I believe this is that stuff I was doing before it. That's that room tone, and this is where the actual voiceover begins. So again, waveform's very valuable.
Get your copy in front of you, and then a few seconds of room tone,
which we got rid of, as you can see from the flat line. So really my voiceover starts right here, and I can kind of just see it visually. So I'm going to trim the same way. I can either select it and then grab the little handle here and pull it back that way. I'm going to undo that. I like just hitting C for cut, getting my razor blade, and I wish After Effects had a razor blade, and I'll trim it, cut it, and then I'll hit V for my selection tool, and then select that and hit backspace. And then if I change my mind, it's still there. It's non-destructive, so I can always put it back. You're just doing a version of it. We want to slam that over to zeroed out, and I might as well just get in the good habits. Doesn't really matter, but I'll put it on the first audio track. So now it's going to look like this, and we've got no transitions. It's just butt cuts. So let's see what it sounds like.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered.
I'll probably have some music intro first, so I'll pull that to the right a little bit. It's going to start off with something ominous, I'm guessing. And then it should come in right on this edit.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered.
Oh, just see that cut? That edit happened right on the beat. And that's what we want. So these are just placeholders while I go through here and just kind of tighten things up and see what they look like. And right now we'll just leave them as butt cuts. And we'll put music to it later.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of...
So here I want to play with that a little bit. I'm going to take this clip, grab it, and shorten it by grabbing the handle and moving it back. So I'm shortening the clip. And over here I'm going to grab this one and extend it out. I'm just trimming it a little bit to see what that sounds like tempo-wise.
For many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping.
Not too bad.
Suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
So it should happen there. Rapping at my chamber door. That edit. So the rest of them line up okay. And usually I'm amazed at the pure accident and chance where things line up.
As of someone gently rapping at my...
Yeah, rapping at my...
Rapping.
So that needs to be trimmed. And again, I just grab the clip and I grab the handle, move it back, grab the other handle, Actually, I'll just take that whole clip and move it to the right. Now I have clips to the right of that as well, and I want to move those as well. And I could easily just shift select those. But I might have missed some down in here that I want to move as well. Sometimes you have miles of clip to the right and you won't feel like zooming out and selecting them all. So in addition to this selection tool, I like this one down in here a lot. Oh, here it is. Yeah, track select forward, so I can go there, and then the opposite, you can get the ones behind it. So just to show you what that means, if I, instead of using the selection tool to select that track, and I want to move all of those tracks closer, I'll deselect. And if I use this tool instead and select that track, see how it selects that track and anything that goes further back and doesn't select the ones in front. Now it selected that audio track because that one was in front of it as well. But now I can just go to the regular selection tool over here and then shift deselect the audio track, and now I just have those guys selected. And the advantage there is I don't have to zoom out and see what I've missed down in here. There could be miles of clips down there you've already solved, and you're just trying to tighten something up in the middle. And so if you select everything in one fell swoop, that way you don't have to go back and fill those gaps all the way down the road. Now we're still editing, so we don't know what we're doing here, so we're going to just see what that happens. But I know I wanted that to happen right on that edit right there, right when the voiceover comes in with the next line. So I'm going to pull it closer and see what that does. So we go over here and
rapping at my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor.
Little tight. So right about there is when we want to change it. The next vocal voiceover. Try to keep things on the beat. And again, I don't have much there. I can zoom out and just go ahead and select it this way because I haven't finished this piece. So I'll pull it over. So let's see what it does.
'Tis some visitor, I muttered, tapping at my chamber door.
Oh. So here we are. Rough stab at it. It's about 38 seconds. So if I hit the return, all these things are just butt cutting. And
Once upon a midnight.
And I kind of try to do it on the beat, you know, with the tempo. So I'm zoomed in, usually looking at the waveforms and the pauses and trying to figure out where those happen and trying to do that with some sort of logic about a rhythm established.
Dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of...
Yeah, maybe I could have adjusted stuff like that, but rough stab at it, that's basically what happens. We throw them into a timeline and we, you know, pull our beauty shots and we get everything timed out so that things end when we want them to. So,
quoth the raven, nevermore.
And so I'll fade out on that. And maybe trim up this soundtrack here where it runs out of sound anyway while I'm here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just make them not butt cut. And if we select two clips, and I'll get the first two here. And let's zoom in. So let's put our playback head up here, and we come down in here and zoom in tighter so we can see what we're looking at. We go to Window and come down to Effects. There it is. And in this particular workspace, it shows down here. I like it up there next to my project window, so usually I tear that tab off and put it up there. But I'll go ahead and leave it down in here. And these are going to be transitions, not effects at all, but transitions. They're in the effects window. So let's turn on the little folder that says transitions. And there's a lot of transitions in here, a lot of them pretty cheesy. So for instance, this 3D motion, if I get the cube span and put that over here and just drag it between those two clips, and then scrub the playback head, it's going to do that. Looks like a PowerPoint presentation. If I get the flip over, it's going to do a page turn, I bet. And I'll just drag it right on top of the other one and replace it, and then see what that looks like. Yeah, sort of 3.5, 2.5D. The dissolves we'll come back to, because that's the one that 99.999% of the time you use. Immersive videos for virtual reality. We won't be doing that in this class, although I'm working on that. Here's some page peels and iris wipes and things like that. I mean, these have, I'll just drag it right on top of that last transition. So now it's going to do that. Looks like something from the 60s Batman television show or something. Again, most of these worthless. The page peel can be used from time to time if I grab it and pull it over and just putting it right on top of those two clips with both of them selected. Then I'll scrub the timeline. Got kind of a 3D thing happening there. It's kind of cool. And I'll bet that if you select that, just like if you select a clip in the effects controls window up in here, if you select a clip, It gives you these options for keyframing, position, scale. I bet if you select the effect, it does the same thing. In fact, it does. So in the effect controls, if you select the transition, you've got other options in here. You can increase the duration and where it centers itself and things like that. So they're tweakable. Here's a page turn. A different one is a page peel. So I'll pull that over on top and let that go. Oh, it takes the image and makes a 3D version of it peeling off. So cool. Again, most of these very unusable. Infinite zoom's kind of fun. This cross zoom, if I grab that one and pull it in. It's actually a real quick one. I've used that before. Yeah, it pixelates, but it happens so fast, you know, half a second, that you don't really see it. So I've definitely used that one before. Okay, dissolves. 99.9% of the time under those transitions, what you're really going to use is these video dissolves. Where are they? Video transitions, dissolve. Let me turn up these other twirlies and just turn on the dissolve. And when you look at the dissolves, only one of them's in blue. And that's because it's a real-time effect. And that was a big deal back in the day where computers didn't have much memory. It would be one of those things where you have to render it first and then watch the dissolve. It would render it to random access memory. Those days are gone, and so now you can just slap that on there and in real time see those dissolves. Actually, most of the effects, as you've seen here, are like that with a computer like I've got, 32 gigs of RAM. So I'm going to grab that cross dissolve and just pull it over there and replace that cross zoom, and let's see what that looks like. And that's what we're looking for most of the time. So as we said, I could select that transition and come over here and tweak the duration if I wanted to. Or I can grab those handles much like a layer and increase them so it's going to happen longer. And then we can get something that looks like a, I don't know, a composite almost, where it's flying outside of that as I scrub the timeline. So now it's going to do this. And really we want cross dissolves on everything. We might adjust the timing of them, but that's what we want. And what it's doing is it's taking a little bit of this clip in the future, this clip in the past, and it's dissolving over them automatically when they're butt-cutted like that. Just for a second here, if I go to film dissolve and try that one, and just see what that does. I like that one better. That's something I've never used before. Huh. And then dip to black, if I put that one on there instead. Go to black and then back up. Dip to white is going to do the opposite, I'm guessing. Go figure. These are kind of nice. Morph cut, I've never seen that one. I'm using Premiere 2020. It's saying analyzing in background. So it's doing some computing. I'm not sure what. Give it a second or two. So I'll come back to that one. I'm going to go back to the cross dissolve and just put that in just in the interest of saving time. Okay, and actually I kind of like that other one. That film dissolve was a little better. Nice, that's what I want. 9 times out of 10 I want cross dissolves, and rather than tweaking them to death and thinking about that, I'm just going to go in there and put them in there. So some of these clips aren't dissolvable. I want it to be a butt cut there, because it goes from long shots, the same clip, because I have 4K, I just went on that head turn to the other shot. So I want that not to have a dissolve. So here I'll just grab that film dissolve I'm liking and pull it over here. Let's just preview that. Yeah, that looks good. And it pops over there. And I'll put a cross dissolve on the next ones just so I can see the difference. Scrub that timeline. Not a lot of difference. Maybe a film dissolve does a little bit more of both sides. And new, and I'm liking it. It's not real time, but on your computers it'll probably be fine. I'll put just cross dissolves in the rest. You know, use the 3D dissolves, use the wipes, get them out of your system. Let's see here, that's not going on there, so let's see what's going on down in here. That one, that clip I don't want to dissolve in because it goes from that to a long shot. And again, it's the same clip trimmed and then shot at 100% there, 4K, and then reduced to 50% here. Let's go down here. And maybe I'll put a cross dissolve there too. Let's zoom in a little bit on that clip. And select both of them. And then grab that cross dissolve and put it right in the middle. See how I'm having problems? Sometimes that happens. And what it usually is I'm at the beginning of one of these clips, because it's going to need some buy-in real estate on this way and probably doesn't have enough. So it's not going to let me do it. So the solution is, if that's the beginning of the clip or the end of this clip, either way I need pad. So usually if I bring that back and then bring it over, I just bought some real estate. That's a pretty long clip. Shouldn't make any difference. Yeah. So now if I go over here and now try it, let's see what happens, and just make sure they are in fact butt cutted next to each other. And take that cross dissolve now. Now it'll take it. So I had to buy back some real estate there.
Rapping at my chamber.
Okay, and then go down in here, do the same thing. Oh, same story there, right? And let's just zoom in and see exactly what's going on there. Let's just zoom way in. So that you would think would have enough space. I must have used the beginning of that clip too. So I need to make sure that they're butt cutted. Just grab them and pull them tight, and then pull that cross dissolve over. Now I'm having that same problem, so I've got to buy back some real estate here. I'll shorten the clip and then bring it over, and now let's try it. Now I've got some space on the left hand side, and now it'll take that dissolve. So let's zoom out a little bit, and let's fix that little gap we had earlier. Although it looks like visually it needs to cut there. So I'm going to grab this cut, and they're all what I call fat. They have a lot of left and right on there. I got the middle of the clip for the most part. So let's see if that's solved the problem here too. Good. So as long as you can drag it onto both, you should be good. That's another butt cut there. This one, no, I didn't either. So I want to grab those as dissolves as well. Here, and then here, and here. And then on this last one, we're going to have it fade out for a long time. We haven't put any music there yet, but we're going to, Command Z, undo that last mess up. Grab this, grab the transition, pull it way out here, so it takes a long time to dissolve. Nevermore. Nice. And we'll do the same thing at the beginning. I'm going to pull my playback head to the very beginning, and I'll grab that cross dissolve and I'll fade up. I'll just put it right on the beginning so it just fades up like that.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore.
Okay, so it's not looking too bad. So what we want to do now is put some music to it. I just happened to download some tracks. Let's go take a look at them. We're going to be in my project window. I'm going to be up in here in my workspace. I pulled the tab over here. And it's in a folder called Premiere Demo Music. And I've got just a bunch of clips in here, and I'll just listen to a couple of them. Just double-clicking to bring them up in the source window. Gotta admit, that could be good. What I'm really interested in is the ending. So I'm going to just stop that, pull it way down to the ending, and let's just get down here and see what that ending looks like. I want it to support that crow looking away. Let's see what that sounds like. Now that could work. Let's go back and try another one. By the way, I went to Audio Library. And up in Audio Library, when I was there at Google, I went over here and clicked in here to search, but I limited my search by genre. I put on cinematic, classical, and I left it at that, on ambient too, I think, and hit apply, so it just returned that as a source. And then I clicked in here again to create a new filter. And here I wanted it to be a mood. I want it to be dramatic. I want it to be inspirational, dark, sad, and maybe romantic, and hit apply. And so that way I got my elements just reduced. So I don't have to, I can kind of narrow my search. And so when I was over here listening, and even then when I was doing this in Audio Library, a lot of times I'll hit a track and I'll go down in here right to the bottom and I'll just listen to the ending because I'm ending critical. That's what I'm looking for. Let's see what Wander looks like. It could work. And so I go down to the ending, see if it's got the big finish. Let's see No, not what I'm looking for. I want to really get that ending that they've already solved that part of the problem for me, and I'll backtrack and fix that the other way. So let's go take a look back at the ones that I did work with, going back to Premiere. Here's some more, just listening to the song and just playing a little bit. Bach, Cello Suite. Let's zip it down to the end and see if that's got an ending I could live with. It's got that noise in the background on that particular version, so I don't like it. Let's see here. Dulcinea. Not bad. Pull the playback head down here, see what this ending sounds like. Nah, remember my crow. So if I go over here to on foot and just listen to a little bit of this. You can see that it builds to a crescendo, which is maybe not what I want either. Let's see what it is. Nope, not satisfied yet. So solo. Let's listen to this one. That could definitely work. Let's see what this ending looks like. Nice. So let's try that. That's a contender. Just two more. Let's just try them. I can already tell from the waveform it's probably not going to work. Let's pull the playback head down. Not too bad. I mean, a fade out works, but it's so not big finish. Let's listen to this one. Nope, too loud, I think. And if I bring it down, if I even thought I might use it, I was downloading it, putting it in the folder. It's you know, Creative Commons free use. So far I'm liking this solo cello. So let's just take that and let's just yank it down to the soundtrack. Mine's 38 seconds. I think that track's like 2 minutes, 10 seconds it looks like. So it's going to be really big. And that's okay. We're going to reverse engineer this and start with the ending. So once we pull it down, I just yanked it down here from that window down into the new track, just like you do in After Effects. And so I come down in here and let's start with the ending. We know it ends there. And by the way, we don't need this clip anymore. We've already solved the problem. These are just leftover clips that I collect down in here. Although I really like some of these ones here better than the one I got, right? So I could go back and replace that later. But for right now, I'll just hit delete. And then we'll start with the ending. So I'm going to trim this clip, and I'm just going to drag it so it fits. I'm just going to pull it up in here, and now it'll fit down in here. I'm going to pull it back, and then I'll zoom, put my thing at the end, and then zoom in on the timeline and get closer and kind of look at the waveforms where I finish talking and where he turns his head, and look at that music and where it ends. And kind of just visually kind of get it in the ballpark. Not quite in the pocket yet. And let's just...
On the night's Plutonian shore, quoth the raven, nevermore.
Not too bad. Yeah, I could live with that. You know, and again, I'm just looking at it visually. I might tweak it a little bit, but that's pretty good.
Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Now, it looks like that volume all over maybe needs to be reduced a lot. So if I go over here and increase the size of it, and that's going to be over here. So if I pull that, I can kind of see a little bit better on the waveform. And before I do that, let's move it a track up. I just dragged it up a little bit so I can see that a little bit closer to the waveform here. And then I'm going to grab this thing over here and make it a little bit higher. And then also pull it down in the picture here. There we go. Because that's the music, and I want to reduce the sound. It's just a little too loud. So if I grab that handle, I can pull that volume slider down. Let's just see what that looks like. And let's get it a lot bigger. And then move it down so we can see what's going on here. Okay. So I'm going to grab it. I'm not going to click because I want to get an overall volume for it. It needs to be about there.
Plutonian shore, quoth the raven, nevermore.
Needs to come down a lot more.
Sure, quoth the raven, nevermore.
So I got these little rubber bands, and I can put them on there. And later on, we'll start it out loud before the vocal comes, and we'll bring it down. So we're just playing with the ending right now.
Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Not too bad. Pull it up a little bit more. Listen to it.
Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts too much of, editing sound, and mixing sound. But basically, you can put as many tracks in there as you want. And for starters, you start to play with levels for sure, which is what I'm doing. But a lot of times also you'll play with equalization or compression to bring those levels up instead of volume. And here, right when it hits that last part here, I guess, you see here what I'm working with. Let's go back and make it smaller again so we can kind of see the files. Oh, good, I'm working on this bottom one. It's Control or Command click, and when I do that, I set a little rubber band parameter there. And I like to be able to move these video things up a little bit too, so I can kind of see what I'm looking at sometimes. But really I want to move this bar so I can kind of see that bottom bar a little bit better. Give myself a little bit more room to see the vocal and here. And so if I put a keyframe there and bring that down a little bit and then put another one over here, I'm Control and Command clicking there to put a little control point on that point there, I can bring that up a little bit in volume, especially when he stops talking. So let's see what that sounds like.
Quoth the raven.
Let's make it get progressively louder, like right about there.
Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Let's do the same thing at the beginning. Oh, we haven't done the beginning. Right now, it's just, we trimmed it, remember? So it doesn't have any sound at the beginning. It just sort of kicks in
Rapping
right
at my
there.
chamber door. 'Tis some
Probably not what we want. And so, you know, we want it to start at the beginning. And so sometimes I'll just do this. We've solved the problem at the ending. Let's just take that clip and just pull it straight back and extend it, because we haven't really trimmed it, and start it at the beginning here and see what it sounds like. Now, if push comes to shove, a lot of times I'll just fade in, and that'll work if I just do that.
Once upon a midnight dream.
Not bad, you know. Now, if it didn't do that, what I'd do is I'd cut this in the middle, and I'd take the beginning of that clip, and in fact, I think I'll just do it both ways, just so we can talk a little bit about that. So I'll pull this up so we can see it a little bit better. Pull this up so we can see it a little bit better, because I'm just working with sound right now. And I'm going to accept that. So if I take a look at that clip, I want that a little bit louder. And that's when the vocal starts, so I put a little control point here, Command or Control click, little rubber band, and then another control point here, and then I'll grab that one and pull it up. Now it's going to be a lot louder. And it'll go down.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping.
So that's one way to do it. I'm going to mute this. I'm going to come over and mute this track. The options are solo or mute, you know, self-explanatory. I'll just mute that track. So now if we play it,
suddenly there came a tapping.
You can't hear it anymore. And then I'll take that track and I'll copy it, and I'll go below, and I'll paste, selecting this layer, track. So I should have two tracks identical, one muted, the other one not. Is that what just happened? Oh no, I got rid of my voiceover, so let's undo that, get my voiceover back, and let's go down to, here's a way to do that. It keeps wanting to go back to this instead of track 3. So instead what I'll do is I'll come over and lock track 1, lock track 2, even though it's muted, and now I'll paste. And so it has no choice but to paste in that third layer. And here I'll pretend that that didn't work out, that beginning didn't work out. 9 times out of 10, though, you're really lucky. And at a minimum, you can fade up on it, and then you got the big finish, and that's what you're always after. So I'll say I'm going to pick it up right about here, right? So that's the ending we've already figured out. It's going to do this. He's going to say his thing. It's going to fade up on the outro. And do that. That's what we want. So what we want to do is fix that beginning. And we want to use the beginning of the song too, right? So let's pull this up a little bit more. And we want to duplicate that again. So if I select that layer and copy it, and then lock this layer, and then pull my playback head just anywhere here, it doesn't matter where I drop it, and paste it, it's going to create a new layer because it has no choice. All the other layers are locked. Now I can unlock this layer if I want. And let's find the beginning of that clip. I could have gone up to the project window and just gotten the clip again, but let's go ahead and extend that out. And what we're looking for is the beginning. And a lot of times we do this in Audition maybe. Okay, let's zoom way out here so we can kind of see the timeline. There we go, that's the beginning of the song. So let's mute this, and we've already muted the other one too. So if we pull this over, it's going to start this way. Okay, that's what we want, that beginning where it comes up with that. We'll pretend. So let's have it start right on the money, and I'm not seeing the thing there, so I'm going to select that layer and then come down and extend that up a little bit too so I can see it, and bring it down so I can see it. There we go. And let's trim it a little bit and have it start just as soon as it fades up, right about there, and move it to the left. So now we got the beginning. We've already solved the ending. It's going to do this at the beginning.
Once upon a midnight dreary.
Nice. So we zoom out, and obviously we don't want that to continue down this road here, so we go just get it out there somewhere. And let's, interesting seeing those, oh, I'm in the wrong track maybe? No, that's it. Isn't that interesting where it gets those pauses?
"'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door.
Okay, interesting. So that's the beginning. It's got those pauses in there. I'm not sure that's going to work. You know, just looking at that. There's a pause here too. Let's see what that looks like. I'm just looking at these waveforms. Is that a good intro?
"On the night's Plutonian shore."
That might be better because I'm looking at the waveforming. We don't have those pauses. I don't want those pauses where it does this.
"Quaint and curious volume of forgotten."
See, I don't want that. So I'm going to move down here, and there's the value of looking at waveforms. We can kind of see it. So I want it to pick up right there. So again, I'm going to select that, hit C for cutting, cut that clip, hit V for my selection tool, select it, hit delete, and then bring that over. And that's going to be my intro now. Let's see what that looks like. It needs to start a little earlier, so I'm going to zoom in and then trim that clip a little bit by just dragging it over here this way, slamming it to the left, and now it should come in right on that fade up.
Once upon a midnight dreary.
Okay, I'm liking that. So it gets down in here, and here's where the trick happens. We have to get that happening on the beat. You know, if it's a couple of milliseconds off on the end, that's okay. We can move it a little bit, but we've already solved the problem of the end. It's this part in here that overlaps. We need to fade one out as the other one fades in. So let's take that clip and let's trim it. C for cutting, or going and getting the cut tool. V for our selection tool, and then we select the end of it and get rid of it. Now 9 times out of 10, if I just butt those together and just keep my fingers crossed, you never know. Let's see what happens. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the timeline, and let's just do that. Let's just put it right on there, pure accident, and see what happens. It's probably not going to work, but let's try it.
"'Tis some visitor."
Oh, let's unmute. Let's try that.
"'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tap.
Oh, I think it'll work. It's the volume's down, right, on the second clip.
Door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered.
Yeah. So we pull this, especially with the voiceover on top of it, that's going to work fine. So let's pull that volume down. And let's see what that sounds like as a transition. And let's go ahead and mute that top one too, so we can not listen to the voiceover. I think that's the voiceover.
Door.
No, it didn't. Let's move up a little bit. A little more. And actually, we don't need to, yeah, we do need to see those. So if we unlock the voiceover and mute that too, and then come back down. And let's see what that sounds like with just the music. Nobody will know on that edit. Although it is editing right on the cut, and I don't like to do that with this type of thing. But with the voiceover, it's about the right volume. So the only thing we need to do now is before that voiceover comes in, we need to increase that volume here. So we go back and unmute the voiceover, or even just put a pointer about where it starts. There's the voiceover. We can see where it starts. So that's when it needs to be this volume, the bottom clip, right? Right here. Yeah, the bottom clip right in here. So we control or command click a control point with the selection tool, and then control command click another control point, and then bring that volume up. And let's just test that. Did we mute our top track? Yeah, let's unmute our voiceover. Remember, we put our playback head right where the thing showed up, so we know that that's where it needs to fade out anyways, but let's just try it now. And actually, I think we've set all of our volume levels, so we don't really need to see those keyframes anymore, so I'm going to shrink them down this way so we can kind of just see all the tracks that we need to see in there. And I'll zoom out on my timeline so we can see what's happening here. Yeah, let's try that. That's this track.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary,
Hey, here's another thing you can do. Remember, here's where the edits are going to be critical. So let's just put it right there, the playback head, and listen to those.
"'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more."
Okay, and if I come down in here, nice. So I've got my intro.
Once upon a...
I've got my middle background music edited, so it's the big finish is there. I started with that and backtracked.
"'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door.
And 9 times out of 10, the song starts really good. They've already figured that out for you, the musicians. And it ends really good. They finished up their big finish. So what you have to do is go back and kind of figure out what you're going to use. And start with the ending in most cases. So this is the sequence. You know, we created this sequence. It's called Sequence 1. And if I go to my program, or my project window, it'll show up over here somewheres. Let me drag my window down somewhere. There it is, Sequence 1. And it's just a series of clips with effects in it, and it's ready to go. So let's do something with that. Let's put some effects on there, some minor effects that come with the program. So what I want to do is, rather than putting an effect on every single layer here, what I'm going to do is just create a new sequence and then pull this sequence into it. It's very much like a pre-comp. So I go up to New. You'd think it would be under Sequence, New Sequence, like it is with After Effects compositions, but instead it's New, and then over here you come down to Sequence. Don't be intimidated by all those little bells and whistles. You know, you really just want to pull clips into a timeline, either butt cut them or put a transition between them, maybe play with titles later on. And we're going to work in 2K, so that's the DSLR set here, and I click OK. 1920 by 1080 is what we're looking for. So I'll grab this sequence and just pull it over here and let go. And so now everything's consolidated in one big thing here.
"Some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more."
And what I want to do is put an effect on there, and the effect I want to put on there is called Lumetri Color. This plugin also comes in After Effects. You could do a lot of this in After Effects too, but this is pretty close to real time. So if I go over to my effects window, it's going to be Window, Effects. Here they are down in here. Before we play with video transitions, let's turn that twirly up. We want to go above it to video effects. There are some really nice audio effects in here too, especially with cleaning up sound. Again, I'd use Adobe Audition, and I'd round trip from here too. You can select the clip, send it to Audition, clean it up, hit save, come back, and it's fixed. But we'll go to video effects, and I can never remember where it is. I'm guessing it's under color correction. And down in here it's called Lumetri Color, and that's what we want. So we're going to take that and we're going to pull it over here and let go right on top of the video clip. It's a video effect, so it won't affect anything on an audio clip. You can't put it on there. And then we let go. And by default, nothing happens. And remember, with effects and with transitions, audio transitions, anything, you control them by the effects controls window. Different than the effects window, the effects controls window. And whenever you select a clip, the first ones are always there. Motion, position, scale, rotation, anchor point. Same ones they have, opacity. Same ones that they have basically in After Effects. And if you put an effect on there, it also shows up, or a transition. Here's Lumetri Color. And so Lumetri Color, if I just go to basic corrections, and this is not really what I want to do, and it's beyond the scope of this little mini demo to kind of go into detail, but if you're shooting straight video, what we're able to do with color grading and color correction is astonishing at the desktop level. And it's at your fingertips with the price of an Adobe license. So it's just amazing what would have cost, tens of thousands of dollars not that long ago to do these types of things. They were very specialized jobs. But here you can adjust, like for instance, the white balance. Now we've got multiple clips, so I'd apply this on multiple clips in the other composition, sequence if I wanted to. But one way to do that is to select the white balance selector and say that's what I want to be white. And when you do that, it'll correct a lot of your other whites for you. You've got exposures and things like that you can control. You can make them higher contrast or whatever. I'm going to Command Z. And again, a lot of these you'd put on individual clips. So for instance, if you're shooting into the light and the next sequence has them shooting with backlight, you could correct that. in post-production. So these basic creative things are not what I wanted to show. So under basic creation, I'll turn that back up again. And then under creative, this is a lot of fun. Over here it says look, and that's usually referred to as a LUT, a lookup table, LUTs. And you can download lookup tables. And the program comes with several. So if I click on some of these, it'll show you what they're going to look like. So if I go over here, unfortunately it doesn't show it to you automatically as you toggle through them. I wish they did. But I'll pick up some of these, CineSpace at the top. And as I scroll through, you can see it's giving it that sort of look. And it's just a look. So, you know, you can take that Lumetri color and either check the box off, or I can just delete it, you know, and go back and try it again. Let's look at some of these other ones. Go down here to SLR Big. And it'll put that kind of look over the whole footage. Motion pictures, of course, do this a lot, right? The big one is Teal and Tobacco, I think, is the new one. So if I go over to, and you can, you know, what they're doing is just doing a series of these steps in here with sharpen, vibrant, saturation, and stuff for you. It's like an action in Photoshop. If I scroll down, some of these noirs, film noirs, are like black and white, is film noir, I guess. And they're all a little different. But with one click, you can get this kind of look. Let's see here, red wave. And because I've got a sequence there with everything nested inside of it, it's being applied to everything. Let me see here, neutral start. So it just makes everything sort of homogeneous. And so I'll usually just place this playback head somewhere where it's got a representative example. And then I'll just kind of scrub it around a little bit and see what it looks like. And I'll pick a preset over here under these looks. I think I'm going to go with some of these up in here, these gold tobaccos, for instance. And if I turn the eyeball over here, you can kind of see what it's doing. That's without it. That's with it. Let's try some other ones in there. These gold heat. Should warm it up a little bit more contrast there too. So these are just looks, you know, cinematic looks. I think I'm going to get down in here and maybe play. I guess it makes sense to make this black and white. So I'll play with some of these film noir presets down in here. That's red. Here's red wave. A little more high contrast. Saint Noir Tri-X. Puts a little green in there. Just play for a little bit here. Saint Matrix Blue. See what it does to that sky. And then I might even do this in the individual clips in the nested sequence there. And if I turn the eyeball off and on, you can kind of see the before and after of what it's doing. And I'll scoot it over here and kind of see what it's doing there too. Turn the eyeball off and on. So that's looking pretty good. I think I'll just go with that one. And this is what it's going to look like so far. And I'll zoom into my timeline a little bit so we can see it. And here's a trick with any Adobe application, I believe. If you select a panel, After Effects, or in this case Premiere, I'll select this monitor panel up in here and make that active, as opposed to the timeline down here being active. So if I select that and then just, let's make that fit. And then if I hit the tilde right below the escape on my keyboard, it'll make it as full screen as Premiere makes it. And if I hit the tilde, it'll put it back to the main menu with my other tabs and panels intact. So just a way to kind of preview something in full screen. So let's take a look at it so far. Hit the space bar to play.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore.
So, just I'm gonna hit the tilde button again, get back my main panels. So just some ideas. There's obviously so much more that the program will do, but if you're just, editing real video clips, especially if you've shot video, pulling out your beauty shots and getting them arranged and kind of getting them sunk, and then doing your own voiceover is a doable thing, and then really massaging those endings in particular. Start with the ending with music. Get that big finish ending. And then come back and either, if you're lucky, you can just pull it back and to the beginning and fade it in if you have to. If you're really lucky, you can just use the clip as is like I did and it'll pop right in. Or you can do like I did with the second example and start with the beginning, cut it midway, and then go to the end, and then where it overlaps in the middle, do your best to kind of fade it in and out. If you've got other extraneous sounds like voiceover, really helps to mask those types of things. So anyways, I hope this maybe gave you some ideas about how to use Adobe After Effects, and I may add to this a little bit later with doing title sequences and things like that, and some other things that you can do in-house in Adobe Premiere.